Everybody loves DRAYANO ROM hacks, but most people would agree that Pokemon Renegade Platinum is the best one, or at the very least, the most popular one and most mainstream and most polished ROM hack that he's made. So many YouTubers and Twitch streamers and just casual gamers alike, along with hardcore Nuzlockers, have played this game in Nuzlocke, and it's become very popular for that. But I want to ask the question, is it possible to beat Pokemon Renegade Platinum with hardcore plus Nuzlocke rules, which is essentially hardcore Nuzlocke rules but even harder, my own variation? Can I do this without a single death? That's right, can I beat a harder version of a hardcore Nuzlocke in this game without losing a single Pokemon? What? Now, I've already done a video of this. It's actually the best video on my channel so far, and I made it all the way to Dawn right before Celestic Town. That's still pretty good. Most people would not be able to get that far without any casualties, especially considering the rule set I'm doing. Now, this isn't just any hardcore Nuzlocke. This is Hardcore Plus. In case you don't know, this is basically hardcore Nuzlocke rules, but the extra rules that I add on top are this. First of all, no setup moves are allowed, because it is my opinion that setup moves are just too overpowered. Swords Dance, Dragon Dance, particularly Dragon Dance Gyarados, that is just a noob trap. It is so overpowered, anyone who knows what they're doing could just trivialize this game. Substitute especially, that move is way too overpowered, along with Encore, it could just abuse the AI. The AI just does not know how to handle it. The only setup moves that I'm even allowing are really awkward ones like Metal Claw, which has a 10% chance to boost your attack, and like Ancient Power, because they're not really setup moves. They're just attacks that might increase your stats, and they're not very viable strategies anyways, but yeah, no setup. The other rule, and this is a very big one, is that in Hardcore Plus, all EV values are switched off. You cannot gain any EVs in this game by any means, so your Pokemon will always have 0 EVs in every stat, no matter what. Not only does this make the game ridiculously harder, especially as anyone who's played Renegade Platinum knows that there's a EV training farm that allows you to gain EVs really easily, but that ends up giving you a humongous advantage. The difference between EVs and no EVs is night and day. And in this Nuzlocke, you won't be able to just brute force, Oonga Boonga, overpower everything. You actually have to think and use your brain. The last rule, which is kind of a strange one, is Blissey is banned. And along with Shedinja, obviously. Shedinja and Blissey, they're so overpowered. Anyone who knows what they're doing could just trivialize the game. Blissey, looking at his stats on paper, even without EVs, it's so stupid. I seriously don't know what Game Freak were thinking when they designed a Pokemon. It literally trivializes half of the game. I see all these dumb arguments. People are like, oh yeah, but Blissey, these noobs, Blissey has really bad physical defense. It still trivializes 50% of the game. You do know that if you're against a physical attacker, you could just switch out your Blissey, right? It's just crazy. I decided to allow Chansey, and though Chansey I am very much on the fence about allowing, I feel like at the end game it's kind of pushing being overpowered, but I think it's still in the realm of being fair, considering it's a not fully evolved Pokemon and it's got no EVs and no setup is allowed. I feel like Chansey is just fair enough, but even that is arguably pushing it. This point about Chansey and Blissey is very important, because in this game there's a repel manip you can do which 100% guarantees that you can encounter a Chansey. So that's why this rule is very important, because you're going to come across it. You can basically get Chansey every single run if you just have a Starly dupe. So that's pretty important to keep in mind. A rule set that really makes this challenge a lot harder than other Nuzlocke rules, and sets us apart from the hardcore Nuzlocke rules that other people in the community do, is that in Renegade Platinum I feel you have to set level caps for every single boss battle, and not just the gym leaders, otherwise you can really trivialize all of the boss battles and it feels kind of unfair, because there can be pretty big level jumps between them. Now, if you are really interested in this challenge, which I would actually recommend, I would recommend you go watch the first video that I've already done, where I made it all the way to Dawn in Celestic Town and failed. It's still a pretty good run, but in that run, I talk very much in depth about all the strategies that I did from the start of the game up until then. The strategies I used were pretty consistent, and you can pull them off yourself. Because in this video, I made way past that Dawn battle. I definitely made it into the late game. I'm not going to spoil what happens. If I were to talk about every single battle in full detail, this video would be 3 hours long. So up until the Dawn point, which I made to my last video, I'm going to be skipping over my strategies because I've already covered them in that video, and the strategies, a lot of them are quite similar. There are some differences I will highlight, but in this video, I'll be going a lot more in detail about the battles after Dawn, the mid-game, in the late game, like Derek and Riley, and Cyrus and Distortion World. Oh, there will be a lot to talk about that. Also, another thing, if you're very interested in this challenge, DRXX, you probably know him, you probably love him, the guy on Twitch. He's a good friend of mine. He has beaten this challenge. So, just before this video starts, yes, it is possible to do this challenge completely deathless. So, with that established, let's go and start the run. So, I started the run and I argue, just like I did in my last video, Turtwig. Turtwig, absolutely best starter. Reset for Pog Turtwig, good IVs, you need Impish Nature, and for good God, do not pick a Turtwig that is not Shell Armor. You need Shell Armor. It is mandatory. Take it. Now in this run, if Pokemon are allowed, you get your Eevee. Now, people do like to say, like, yes, Eevee is good with any nature. You can make it evolve into lots of different kinds. You can be physical or special with Jolteon or something, but my consistent strat that I do for every run, and I would recommend, is I use Eevee purely as a synchronizer, because Umbreon will always have Synchronize, and being able to pass the optimal nature onto really good encounters is just incredibly useful, because in this game, a lot of really insanely good encounters are actually guaranteed. So it's really important that you make your really good encounters, the ones that you're really going to be using and that are going to be carrying your run, make them as optimal as you can be. So there are lots of good natures, and it does kind of depend how you play. People like DRXX, he likes to play a lot more like hyper offense, but I basically trivialized most of this game by playing defense, by playing stall strategies, and a lot of my stall strategies I came up with were pretty autopilot. You can use them too once you've seen me do them. They're actually very easy to do. So defense is the name of the game, so I say Impish Nature is definitely my favourite nature. Almost all the encounters that you get in an early game that you can synchronize actually want to be Impish Nature. They don't really care about their special attack stat. Even encounters like Slacking in Zubat, which are physical attackers, they still benefit quite a bit from Impish Nature. I'm not going to be going over all my encounters. You will be seeing the encounters that I use in the battles, because otherwise this video would be way too long, but you shouldn't have too much issue. You start off with the game, use your Eevee. One thing that is really important is that make sure that your Eevee does not go past level 7 right now, because you need to do Repel Minips, and you will turn it into Umbreon. Then you can start synchronizing Impish Nature in all your encounters. But you go to the first boss battle, which is the Barry battle, and this battle's okay. There can be a little bit of RNG. I'll skim over it, but I always use Turtwig to beat the Munchlax. That is one thing that's consistent for all my runs. The star lead that he has, that will depend on what encounters you have. You can use like the Piplup or the Squirtle that you can get and give them Rock Tomb. That's one way of dealing with them. And the good thing about picking Turtwig is that Chimchar is really easy to deal with, so you're almost always going to have a water or a fire type that can just Walt out. So that's very simple. Now, the first hurdle that many people will have doing this run is the Roark boss fight, but if you have the strategy nailed down, the Roark boss fight is really easy, just like it was in my last video. The strategy is pretty much the same as before. You can lead off with Ivysaur or Chimchar to ideally stop the Nose Pass from attacking with Thunder Wave. You weaken it so Turtwig can safely come in without being paralyzed, then have Turtwig beat Nose Pass. At that point, Turtwig can just go to Rampage and it will take out most of his team. If not, it will literally take out his entire team, which is what happened in this run. It was absolutely crazy. It's really funny. Then moving on, the Mars boss fight is usually not an issue. Like the Zubat you can easily handle. The Yanma might be problematic. If you do have the Riolu encounter, which there's actually a way you can manipulate, so it's actually decently likely to get, that will make the fight pretty easy. An Intimidate user along with Shell Armor Grottle will also make the Perugly a lot easier to handle, along with a good rock type or steel type, like Steelix if you're very lucky, or even Geodude can work. If you have all those things, you shouldn't have any issues. Now, I will be skipping over the next Cheryl boss battle because it's actually one of the easier boss battles in the game. If you have good mons, like Lucario and Grottle and Umbreon, you shouldn't have any issues with this, so I will just be skipping past this. Now, you will get a lot of encounters here, some of which are very important, like Feebas and potentially like Munchlax if you're lucky, you can get it this early. But I'll just be going straight to Gardenia. Now, Gardenia, she's usually easy enough. There are 1 or 2 points in the battle where you could potentially get unlucky or mess up, but usually this battle is very straightforward and easy. What I did was, I had Breloom early game with Poison Heal, so that was actually quite lucky. Breloom is very good because it can use Spore to put Blossom to sleep. That allows Monferno to use Taunt on Blossom. You don't want it using Thunder Wave. Then Beedrill can just put in a lot of work. The only real issue with this battle is a Roserade. That can be quite scary, but the guaranteed Metang is pretty good because that can usually switch in, almost always take a critical hit, then hit it back pretty hard. Then at that point, the Roserade will go for a grass move, so you can simply switch into your Crobat, which is a very common encounter, and just finish it off at that range. Most of the other things should be pretty simple. If you have Breloom, for example, you could just destroy everything. And Monferno is also really good for this battle. You shouldn't have too much issue. So I'll be moving on with this run onto the late game. I do kind of skip over the next few boss battles like Jupiter. I'll say for Jupiter, Lucario is very, very good for the Skunk Tank. And ideally you want ground types to deal with that and use Metang for the Golbat. And the Mirror battle is also very, very consistent. Just use the guaranteed Beedrill to take out Togetic, then Umbreon to pivot into Crobat to beat Kadabra. And at that point you should be fine, but you can watch my last video if you want to see how I dealt with that in more detail. Same with the next Iron battle. This is usually seen as one of the harder difficulty spikes in the game, but if you have a Stealth Rocker, a Crobat, Shell Armor Torterra, and a Fire type like, for example, Monferno, you win the battle every single time without any issue. It's that free. You just need to have the timing nailed down and you'll get the same result predictably every single time. So next up is Fentiva. In this battle, it's a lot more boring than it is difficult. This battle is actually very easy, unless you misplay. If you have good Captivators, like male Umbreon, male Torterra, it's important that your Torterra is a male. Togekiss, that's male that can use Captivate. You could just win the battle by just captivating the Drifblim and letting it baton pass. You just win. Easily. Once Gengar goes down, the battle's basically over. Torterra just destroys the rest of the team with Captivate, Rest, Leech Seed, and Seed Bomb. And that's basically it. It's a very straightforward, easy battle. It just takes a long time because you have to keep stalling Captivate and such. Now this next battle, I actually wiped a few times to this battle. On the surface, it can be very annoying because the rival just likes to throw, and most of his team is weak to Psychic, which is really annoying, but my strategy for this, once I figured it out, is to lead up with Torterra, which is really bulky, and can take a lot of hits from the lead 2 mons, and ideally just focus on the Wigglytuff side and leave up the Bronzong. You could Leech Seed the Wigglytuff, don't Leech Seed the Bronzong, you want that to stay up in the field. Because then Raichu will come in next, and that obviously won't do anything to Torterra. And so you only really need to deal with the Espeon, and once you do that, you only have to deal with one side now. So if Barry's mons are still alive, it basically just becomes a 2 versus 1, which is actually really good. At that point, the battle will be pretty much over, which is what you want. But there can always be some amount of RNG. Something can always go wrong. Next up is a Maylene battle, and this battle isn't as hard as most people say it is. As long as you know how to use a lot of the exploits properly, you do a good mix of offense and defense. Now, Medicham is extremely powerful, and you need to have some kind of way of dealing with it. I use Gyarados to lead off with Intimidate to weaken it. Then I go into Togekiss with Choice Scarf that can one-shot it, so that's really good. Toxicroak has Poison, Ice, and Fighting coverage, so I pivot into Gliscor. Then I use Earthquake to one-shot it. Make sure it's fast enough, otherwise you'll take an Ice Punch to the face. Unfortunately, this Gliscor is not Poison Heal, which is very unfortunate, but it still worked in this particular situation. Now, Lucario is her ace, and I almost always use Gyarados to deal with this. It's very good at taking it out because it resists dual stab, it has naturally very good special defense. You can give it leftovers to make it even bulkier, and you can just use Earthquake to two-shot it. It's Focus Sash anyways, and she'll use a healing item anyways, so it just gives you more time to KO it. You can even use Thunder Wave if you want, I've done that a few times. I was able to use Choice Scarf Milotic, and the Milotic was fast enough to outspeed it, so that is very good. Now, next is my champion. That thing is very, very powerful. Torterra with Shell Armor is able to switch in and beat it almost always. You do need to be pretty careful of that because it's quite a powerhouse. I do pivot in on Thunder Punch because I know it's going to use that against Milotic, so I give Torterra a free turn to use Earthquake on it. And Gallade can usually just get walled out by Torterra. If you use Leech Seed, then you pivot through Gyarados to intimidate it. It'll be significantly weakened, and because Torterra just can't get hit by crits, you could just use Leech Seed to keep recovering your HP and just destroy it, and at that point you just win. Okay, the rival battles next, and this battle is actually trivially easy if you know how to do it. Now, this is an exploit that most people never actually use, and I truly think, I believe that Omastar is in fact the best fossil. This is something that I've been experimenting with since I made my last video, and I've really just solidified my opinion on this. Omastar is just a phenomenally good fossil, it really is. It has two very good abilities, but one of them, Shell Armor, is literally the best ability in the game. If it does not get Shell Armor, it gets Swift Swim, and Swift Swim is good for the endgame for the Elite Four because you can really abuse rain teams with Drizzle. But Omastar, Water Rock, very good typing, complements Gyarados very well. And it also has Toxic Spikes, which is one of the better and most abusable moves in the entire game. So what I do against a rival, if you have Shell Armor, this is even more autopilot. Mine was not Shell Armor, so critical hits could potentially mess me up, but I was still able to make the strategy work regardless, so keep that in mind. What you do is you lead off with Omastar, then you use Protect and Leftovers, and then you keep pivoting from that to Gyarados, then back into Omastar, because the Staraptor will always close combat on Omastar, and it will always go for normal or flying move on Gyarados. So your mons are just constantly resisting and getting leftover recovery, so they don't take that much damage. And after 2 switches with Protect, the Staraptor will be out of close combat. So it's going to be like -3 from Intimidate, it's going to be like -2 defense, and it can only attack Omastar with Double Edge while its attack is really low. If you have Shell Armor, it literally just cannot do anything to you. And at that point, Omastar is free to literally do whatever the hell it wants. Now, I had Steelix as well, which is a phenomenally good wall. Purely as an insurance policy, because yeah, Omastar could get crit and that will deal a lot of damage, but Omastar can literally just set up spikes and toxic spikes, and once you do that, you basically win the battle. The rival has no way of playing around toxic spikes, and it's a really broken move. You just toxic everything on his team, and once Strapper goes down, you just keep playing defensively until you win. That's literally it. You keep pivoting, and you keep spamming Protect. Like Infernape, you switch in on Gyarados on a fire move or a fighting move, then on Gyarados I know it'll go for a thunder move like Thunder Punch. So I go into Steelix, then you can just rinse and repeat, and after 3 turns Infernape will just die from toxic damage. You could basically do that to almost all of his mons. Like, then you could just bring some other stuff really. Like Venusaur, for example, is good for Breloom, and Shell Armor Torterra with Synthesis is always really good. That can just stall for days. But you literally just cannot lose this battle after the Toxic Spikes are set up. It's such a stupid strategy. I almost feel bad for using it. It's that crazy. Wake is a very easy gym leader. He really is. He's very abusable. So my strategy for him is usually just lead off with Breloom. Poison Heal is arguably the better ability, but Breloom is very good, and there are ways you can manipulate it with the Honey Trees. You just use Spore, so you put the Quagsire to sleep, then you Sunny Day to get rid of the weather, then ideally you take out the Quagsire. then Gyarados will come in, and you could spore that also. If your Focus Sash on Breloom, which you should be running by the way, if the Focus Sash has been broken, then you can switch out into something like Empoleon with Feather Dance, or I use Lapras, which is a guaranteed gift encounter, and you just spam Grubble. Now, I know this sounds weird. Why the hell are you spamming Grubble? That's because Gyarados is the only threat on his team. Once Gyarados goes down, the rest of this team just falls over like dominoes. What makes Gyarados threatening is that it has Dragon Dance, and we all know how scary Dragon Dance Gyarados is, right? The thing also has Wakan Berry and is naturally very bulky, so electric type moves are a very risky strategy, as most electric types that could take it out are very frail and they do not want to take a Dragon Dance boosted hit. So if you keep lowering its attack, it won't be able to boost. Water types do wall it out, as the only thing it can reliably attack water types with is Crunch, which isn't going to do that much damage. So once the attack is really weak, you could basically just destroy it with something else. You could use like Milotic, for example, or a Shell Armormon. So that's a pretty good strategy. Once the Gyarados goes down, the battle really is over. Ludicolo is the only special attacking threat in his team, and that gets completely destroyed by Chansey. And Chansey is absolutely ludicrous. It's so stupid. The rest of the Mons on Wake's team get absolutely trivialized by Milotic. Milotic with Aqua Ring just destroys his team. Nothing on his team can hit it super effectively, and Milotic will heal 12% of his HP every single turn, and 24% every second turn with Protect. So there's really nothing more to see, you just win. Now, this is where the video is going to start getting more interesting. This is a Dawn battle, and this is where I wiped you last time, so this is when we're really starting to get into the mid-game, into the boss rush gauntlets, where we really do start getting into the big boy leagues. Now, I've learned a lot since my defeat in the last video, and I've improved my strategies a lot since. Though my encounters are a lot worse than last videos, and I don't have that many Shell Armormons, I actually don't have a single Shell Armormon apart from Torterra. I was still able to win this battle easily, with much better strategy and planning. So slacking with Choice Scarf is my favourite lead, because it always just destroys the Alakazam in one hit, then can switch out. This baits out Lopunny, which you can absolutely destroy with Gyarados. Its Choice Scarf, or Banded it seems, it just keeps using Jump Kick. That's just really convenient for Gyarados, which just pummels it. Clefable also gets completely destroyed by Torterra of all things. You just use Protect, Leech Seed, and Synthesis, and you just heal up all of your health and can just destroy it at your own leisure. Now, Mamoswine, this is the thing that made me wipe last time. This thing is a big threat. The really annoying thing about this is that its moveset can be random, because it's got the move Avalanche. The AI in Renegade Platinum is very weird when it comes to revenge type moves. Moves that have negative priority like Revenge, Payback, Avalanche. For some reason in this game, the AI always has a probability of using those kind of moves. This makes things a little bit awkward, because Mamoswine could use Avalanche at any point, even if it makes no sense. There are many times where I have a Feraligatr and the Mamoswine will use Avalanche. This can be really helpful if you use Avalanche against like a Feraligatr which does not care in the slightest about it, but it makes pivoting strategies really awkward, because if you try to pivot in through a ground type, which would usually work, it could randomly get hit by an ice move, so you can't really do that. And because Torterra is my only Shell Armormon, that can't really be used. So the way I had to deal with it was I pivoted continuously between Gyarados and Metagross, because it would always use Stone Edge and Earthquake. So we just keep pivoting until Mamoswine is at -6 attack. Then I could go into Feraligatr. And Feraligatr has pretty good physical defense, so with Mamoswine is -6, you should be fine and able to beat it. You usually are able to take a crit if worst comes to worst, but Protect Plus and Leftovers should make it that you'll recover enough health to where you shouldn't really be in a crit range anyways. So this is my way of beating it. If you have a Shell Armor, Omastar for example, or a Kingler, you just destroy it easily that way. Flareon can be pretty scary, but luckily Gyarados was able to handle it. That thing can be very annoying. Ideally you want to pivot that thing later on. And Philemon is Empoleon. Luckily, this thing does not have any ice coverage, so Torterra can put in a lot of work against it. Slacking can usually one-shot it with Earthquake if it's choice banded, and if it's not, it almost one-shots it with Earthquake, so that's another really good use for Slacking in this battle. So, with that done, I'm finally past that Dawn battle. This is my new record. It's time to go to the rest of the game. Luckily for us, the next boss battle, the first Cyrus fight, is actually quite easy because he only has 4 Mons. My consistent strategy for the lead Crobat is to bring Metagross because this is a special Crobat. It has nothing to hit us neutrally with. Yes, it can use Hypnosis, but with leftovers, it's not going to do that much damage. Make sure that your Metagross also sets up Stealth Rock because you really want that for the Weavile in the Honchkrow, particularly because I think the Weavile is Focus Sash. But yeah, you take out the Crobat really easily. The Honchkrow can be very annoying, but you can use a lot of things like Feraligatr with Intimidate to pivot in on the Night Slash, and Steelix to pivot in on Braithbird. They should be able to wall it out quite effectively. Once its attack is low enough, you'll just beat it easily enough. I did make the mistake of leaving Steelix in when the Magnezone comes in. This is because Magnezone has Magnet Pull, and you do not want to be the receiving end of that, especially if your Steel type is at risk of losing to that Magnezone. I lost a previous run once here because Magnezone was able to outspeed my minus speed nature Metagross, and that is really rough. Luckily, I was somehow able to outspeed the Magnezone and KO it. Maybe it went for like Miracle or something really weird. I really don't think Steelix is faster than Magnezone. I'm not complaining anyways. In Weavile, which we'll be fighting a few times throughout the challenge, my strategy to beat this, once you have Stealth Rocks, is Feraligatr, because Feraligatr can take his Dual Stab, and its other move is Aerial Ace. So Feraligatr with Intimidate can always switch in and just use Brick Break. That's very simple. That battle was very straightforward. Now the next battle here against Castle Valdarak. Many people will say this is literally the hardest boss battle in the game, or the biggest to fully spike. This fight has a big reputation among the Renegade Platinum community, and if you're not prepared for this battle, it certainly is something. His team is quite crazy. However, it is of my opinion that this is actually a very easy boss battle, and I've come up with an almost literally guaranteed cheese strategy with encounters that are almost literally guaranteed throughout the game that will allow you to just cheese this battle every single time. Here's how. Always lead off with Slacking. Choice band Slacking no matter what will always one-shot Gallade, easily. This will always bait in Alakazam, which will always try to go for Focus Blast predictably. You can switch into anything that resists it, like Togekiss or Gyarados, which is what I do. In which case, it will always go for Psychic. So you pivot into preferably a Dark type, that could be Choice Scarf, or a Sucker Punch, like Mightyena. You Sucker Punch at Alakazam and take it out. If you use a Dark type, that will bait out Staraptor because of fighting coverage. In which case, you pivot into Gyarados with Intimidate, and take the close combat pretty well. Well, mine got crits, but still, pretty well enough. In which case, the Staraptor will always go for Braithbird. In which case, you then pivot into Relicanth, which is a guaranteed encounter which can take Braithbird very well because its defense is stupidly high and I synchronize it in Pitch Nature, so as bulky as anything. In which case, it will always go for close combat, so you go back into Gyarados, and you can repeat this until the Staraptor is pretty weak. Omastar is also a very good Pokemon in this battle because that also completely destroys Entei. Water Rock is very helpful here. Omastar is more like a backup for Relicanth, just in case Relicanth gets hit by a crit and takes too much damage. Omastar can kind of like pick up the pieces. You just use this to assault the Staraptor, and once it's out of close combat, so you just wipe it out. I could also use Omastar to set up spikes, just to flex. You don't even need to do it, but I thought it would just make the battle even more of a meme to do so. It also allows you to Toxic Assault the Entei, so that's like even less of a threat. Metagross also pretty much does nothing because you could switch Hammer Arm into Gyarados, then it will always go for Zen Headbutt, so I go to Intimidate Mightyena. Then I could just go back into Gyarados and Hammer Arm, and you could just do this until Metagross is incredibly low in attack. and Hammer Arm will make it incredibly slow, so Torterra can just destroy easily. At that point, the battle is pretty much over. There's really nothing that can be done. Entei gets walled out by Water Rocks completely, and I've got Toxic Spike, so it's literally doing nothing. The only thing that's left is Empoleon, and with Spike's damage, that is enough for Slacking to just destroy it. Actually, wait, because Slacking is Choice Banded, the spikes don't matter. Choice Band Slacking will always one-shot Empoleon with Earthquake no matter what. Even if it's minus attack nature, like this one was, still one-shots no matter what, easily. The spikes make it so you don't even need Choice Band, but yeah. Next rival battle in Candice City, and here you do a very similar strategy as last time. The only difference here from the last battle is that the Staraptor is Choice Banded, so this can actually deal a lot of damage. Omastar, if it's not got Shell Armor, can legit take like 75% from a critical hit Brave Bird, so you have to be very careful. Luckily, Impish Nature, almost max IV Steelix, is able to tank it that much. You could bait out something like, you could just lock it into like Double Edge, for example, which will allow you to just set up Stealth Rocks and destroy it. This time I wasn't able to set up spikes, but you can still do pivot strategies to destroy the rest of his team quite easily. Crobat is very, very good, just in case you're not able to set up your toxic spikes and you actually have to like fight your opponent on an even playing field. You really want a Crobat that can outspeed a plus nature Infernape. Mine can, and it can easily pivot on close combat. It also hits the majority of his team super effectively with poison and flying coverage, so it's very good. I intimidate the Azumarill with pivot loops until it's really weak, then I set up my toxic spikes, but I will say for this battle, you really want to make sure that toxic spikes are up for the Snorlax, or at the very least, you need something for Snorlax. The one thing that is really challenging in this battle is that the Snorlax has Curse and Slack Off and Leftovers. If the Snorlax sets up enough curses, that could literally wipe your run. So you need to be very careful about that. However, the Snorlax has Thick Fat instead of Immunity, so if you have Toxic Spikes, you just destroy the Snorlax anyways. It literally dies while it's setting up. It's just not going to have enough turns to do anything as long as you play defensively. Make sure that you have something with the move Toxic on your team, just in case you're not able to set up your Toxic Spikes, as a precaution. But if you keep all that in mind, you should be fine for this battle. Now, after that, Riley's next, and this is seen as another very hard battle. I've seen DRXX wipe to this like twice. His team is very powerful. It's like a hyper offense physical team. However, with the same old defensive stall strategies and pivots and toxic stall, play defensively, which is the name of the game in my opinion, you can win this battle really easily. Now, Breloom I think is very good lead here, especially if it can outspeed the Absol. But with Focus Sash, you always take a hit and just spore it and just destroy it anyways. Depending on your IVs and such, you could use Drain Punch and actually restore all of your HP, meaning that your Focus Sash will be live again, which would be really good for Salamence. Mine was not, but it doesn't even matter. This is because Salamence will always use Fly on your Breloom, which will actually waste its Power Herb. You could basically take advantage of this by just switching in something that resists it. Now, Salamence no longer has a Power Herb, and it can set up, so Railcamp could just use Yawn to put to sleep, then just use Stone Edge, and you just beat it really easily. Metagross is here, and yes, this is a threat, but you could do the same old strategies of pivoting between Gyarados and my own Metagross until his attack is really low, then just Torterra memes on it. In fact, Torterra memes on everything on his team apart from Salamence. Being immune to critical hits is just broken. The way you beat Lucario easily is you just predict high jump kick. Like, if I've got Railcamp out and Lucario sees kill with high jump kick and no other move, it's obviously going to high jump kick, right? So you just use Protect, so it takes a humongous amount of recoil damage. Then it's obviously going to do it again, so you switch into a ghost type like Gengar and it dies from recoil damage. You literally just sit there and let the Lucario KO itself, which is really funny. Ursaring comes out and it almost always goes for a Protect turn 1 unless it sees kill, so after one Intimidate, Torterra can just trivialize it really well. You could actually pivot between Relicanth and Gyarados once again can intimidate a few times, and Torterra will just destroy to that point. Get used to me saying this. It is getting a little bit boring. I will say, after this point, we do rely on Torterra strats with Shell Armor and Gyarados abuses. A little bit less so, because you will need to start doing other strategies at that point, but it really is that good. It makes a lot of these battles, as you're seeing, really autopilot. Like, you could try to play hyper offensively, but if I do that, the main issue is, like, you could literally forget something or, like, make a little misplay, and your frail sweeper, like, will end up taking a hit and dying. But if you're doing strategies like this, that won't happen. So I really like it. It's really cheesy. But I will say, in this run, through a string of very easy boss battles, now things are starting to get a little bit scary. Many people say that the double battle, the Snow Point Temple, it's like a normal battle, but it really is a boss battle pretty much in all but name. Many people will say that this is the hardest boss battle in the game. I will say they're absolutely kind of sort of correct. This is low-key one of the harder battles in the game. I don't actually have any good way of dealing with this. There is going to be a lot of crap shooting. The threats on the opponent's team, like Typhlosion, Meganium, are very rough, and double battles are just chaotic in general. Now, I just YOLO'd a strategy here, and luckily it did work. Lucario and Crobat are very good leads. My Lucario with adaptability is Choice Scarf, so it does outspeed everything, and this works really well, because Crobat will just one-shot Heracross, then Lucario will just one-shot the Blissey. Then that will bait in, luckily for me, Meganium and Tyranitar, which is very, very good. I don't know why Meganium came in here, it doesn't make any sense, but that's really good because I can just one-shot them as well. So I only have to deal with the final two for Alligator and Typhlosion. However, this was definitely easier said than done. There's a strong physical and special attacker, so you need to be very careful with things like Chansey. I definitely had to dodge, I think, 2 crits in this battle, and things really could have gone wrong. The Typhlosion likes to use Protect, and that is going to be really RNG. I did get screwed over by me being able to KO the Typhlosion, but it used Protect, so it kind of stalled out a turn while Alligator attacked. There's usually going to be some amount of RNG in this battle, and you need to be very, very careful. It's just how it is. Double battles are really chaotic. In Nuzlocke, they're like the bane of everyone's existence. Ask any Volt White player, and he'll tell you the same thing. But thank God I got through this in one piece. I definitely could have wiped here, and I actually feel really grateful that I didn't. This is definitely the hardest boss battle that I've done yet in this run, and the closest I've gotten to wiping. So I'm quite grateful for this. Next up is Candice, and I would say she's actually the hardest gym leader in this game, or I guess I should say more, the least easy gym leader. Now my strategy for this was actually not as good as it could have been. The thing is, I didn't really calculate which mons she would send out next, but what strategy I would recommend is you beat a Bulbasaur with a Pokemon that can also bait out Wolverine. And that is very important, because when Wolverine comes out, you can send in Tentacruel, and Tentacruel makes this battle pretty much free, because Wolverine really cannot do much to Tentacruel. So what Tentacruel does is, you can set up like Rain Dance to get rid of the hail, then you can just Toxic Spikes, because the Tentacruel, it's really not going to be taking a lot of damage from Wolverine. So once you have Toxic Spikes, you can just stall out the rest of the team. Frostlass is the only threat that you really need to worry about, but I was not able to do that. I had to use a different strategy because Candice sent out mons in like the weird order, and her Frostlass was very problematic. Choice Scarf Lucario with adaptability does go off, and that is a very good strategy for this battle. It flat out wipes out half of her team very well. You do have to be very careful with Glaceon because that can dodge hits because it's got Snow Veil. I do use Chansey on that, and Chansey is very, very good along with Thick Fat Snorlax. However, the Glaceon does get the freeze with Blizzard, and I do not have Natural Cure, so that is very, very annoying. Things could have gotten really weird, but I was able to Toxic the Glaceon. You want to use Toxic on it, because that thing, it spams double team in Snow Cloak, or Snow Veil, whatever the hell it's called, like a bitch. It's really annoying. Just kill kill it with poison, really. Weavile comes out next, and that you just once again destroy with Feraligatr. In Frostlass, that was a big issue because I did not have a good answer for this because my Chansey took way too much damage from the Glaceon because it was toxic. Make sure that your Chansey has Sunny Day so you can remove the hail. Make sure you get rid of that annoyance. Your Chansey can usually do that if it wants. But nothing in my team could really handle this very well. I did have a strategy that I kind of figured out halfway through the battle. It does have Life Orb, so if I let the Frostlass take enough damage, I did have to dodge 1 or 2 crits, but if I could just hold on for a few turns, the Frostlass will take enough Life Orb damage, so Metagross with Iron Fist can switch in on Blizzard. Then it can use Iron Fist boosted Bullet Punch to just finish off the Frostlass and win. That battle could have gone quite wrong. This was definitely the hardest gym leader by a big margin. I didn't really prepare for this properly, I will say. I did kind of YOLO my strategy. But I have kind of outlined what strategies I would use if I were to do this again and what I would recommend for you, the viewer. And yeah, Walrein, it literally just does nothing, especially once the heal is gone. Like, it just doesn't do anything to Tentacruel. You could just meme on it, so make sure you beta that. So once this is done, we have to deal with all the Team Galactic stuff and put them to rest once and for all. Now, in Nuzlocke in this game, in particular in 1 Death Equals Reset, I will be skimming over the first Cyrus fight as we will be fighting him again very soon, and he has basically the same team but stronger in that battle. So you could just use my strategy that I used in that battle, and you could just use that for this battle as well. But the 12 versus 12 at Spear Pillar, this is the battle that everyone talks about. This is the battle that most Nuzlockers who play this game really struggle with. It's one of those infamous battles because it's 12 versus 12. It's so chaotic. You need to be very careful for lots of things. You need to be prepared for 12 different threats. You also need to be prepared for the fact that your rival could literally just decide to play it in his ass and just wipe. And it will be literally like 2 versus 1 against you, which you do not want. You also need to be ready for lots of random stuff, lots of random RNG and crits. You need to be ready for lots of different situations. So my strategy for this battle overall is, though I like to play defensively, when the battle starts, do not play defensively. You need to play offense. You can't afford to be too passive at the start of the battle. You need to start going on the offense and start KOing stuff as soon as possible. You need to start racking up a body count before your rival starts losing mons out of his own. You cannot afford to just be passive while your rival starts losing a lot of mons, because he will wipe if you're not careful and you'll be left to fend for yourself. The AI is really bad when it comes to type matchups and sending out their next Pokemon. They usually don't calculate defensive typing, so because my rival has Infernape, the majority of his team is weak to flying, so if Crobat wipes out his Staraptor, he will send in Infernape, then Heracross, then Breloom, and those are obviously horrible matchups. He won't send in Snorlax, usually. Unless it's in a very specific situation. So you need to get rid of the Crobats, for example, as soon as possible. I lead off with Metagross because it's bulky, yes. It can take hits, it can stay on field, but it also hits like a truck. It also has Bullet Punch, for example, to deal with the Crobats. So at least you could take care of those, and it's also quite bulky. And use Protect, or in double battles you always want Protect. If you think the AI is going to see, if the AI can see kill on you, use Protect. And always try to predict what move the AI will use and try to pivot in accordingly. Instead of explaining exactly what happened in this battle, it's very hard to come up with an exact strategy because this battle is just so chaotic. So I'm just going to show you how this battle unfolded. You might want to take some notes. So, the big climactic boss battle of Renegade Platinum, the end of the Team Galactic saga, the final Cyrus showdown in Distortion World, at level 60, and this is known as the craziest boss battle in the game, and probably the most memorable, because of how you have to fight Cyrus now twice, back to back. You do get healed in between the two battles, but if you lose them on in either of the battles, the run is obviously over. But the first battle, Cyrus leads off with flipping level 70 Palkia and Dialga. They're 10 levels above the level cap, which is nutty. This sounds crazy, I know. But what if I told you that this double battle here has a cheese strat just like every other battle that is almost literally guaranteed in every Nuzlocke of this game? Well, there are some IV dependent variables. So Milotic should always be in your first slot, so it should be on the left side. With Choice Scarf, some IVs can matter in this. Then on the second slot, I recommend Infernape, but really do make sure that when you get your Infernape at the start of the game that it can outspeed Dialga. Turns out that Palkia and Dialga, I guess to balance them out, in this battle they have 0 IVs, so you can take advantage of that. So it shouldn't be too hard to get an Infernape that can outspeed Dialga. That's quite easy to do. Now, what I would recommend for this battle is not the strategy that I ended up doing. What I did was I had Choice Scarf Milotic outspeed both of them and have it Moonblast Dialga and beat it in 2 shots, while Infernape uses Fake Out on Dialga. Then with Focus Sash it always takes at least 1 hit. Then it can use Protect, so it can always survive another turn. Well, Milotic can then just attack the Dialga. Then this required me to switch out and then beat it another way, and I did have to dodge 1 critical hit because Dialga was just always attacking Milotic. The AI in this battle was very random. That strategy worked, but I would not recommend it. There's a better strategy here. My Infernape was minus speed nature, so it did not outspeed, but if your Infernape is not minus speed nature, and it does outspeed Dialga, which it should most of the time, what you should do is you still have Focus Sash on Infernape, but you could just Moonblast, then Close Combat the Dialga, and because you're double attacking with Close Combat, that should take it out. Then on the next turn, Milotic can just Moonblast the Palkia, while Infernape uses Protect. Then on the third turn, you just outspeed Palkia with Moonblast and 2-shot it. Or you could always just switch out Infernape if you need another turn. Because Palkia literally does nothing to Milotic, so if you take out Palkia in the first turn, you're basically just safe, because like your Milotic will just be free to take out the Palkia at its own leisure. You just need to make sure that the other side of your team survives, but that should be fine. Once we do this, we're free to go to the next, in the final Cyrus battle. Now, this is actually pretty easy. My strategy for this is that the lead Crobat is Choice Banded, and if you have Milotic, it will always go for a poison move. So you just switch into Steelix, and the Crobat just literally cannot touch you. Sometimes Cyrus might switch out, but I could use this opportunity to set up Stealth Rocks, then just destroy the Crobat. And the rest of his team is quite simple. Houndoom can be quite scary, but with Stealth Rocks and Choice Scarf Milotic, you just switch in and destroy it. Having a really slow Milotic could be quite bad for this, but fortunately mine was decently fast. Then Magazone can be easily trivialized by Gastrodon. Magazone literally cannot do anything to it. Honchkrow can be destroyed by Steelix. In this particular fight, this Honchkrow is very random AI that ends up being really good for me. Like, this flipping Honchkrow has superpower, but it chooses to use Braithbird. Just let that sink in. That is some 10-head level play right there. Then Gyarados is very scary, because it has Dragon Dance, and you know how scary Dragon Dance Gyarados is, but I have a really spicy strategy of beating this. Poliwrath is an almost guaranteed Pokemon, and you can literally just use Haze, and you beat it that way, which is really funny strategy. Gyarados' attacking moves are Ice Fang, Aqua Tail, and I think Stone Edge. So with that, it literally does barely any damage to Poliwrath, and if you use Haze, it can't even Dragon Dance. So Poliwrath is free to just Rock Tomb the Gyarados until it faints. It's a pretty funny strategy. It's a really interesting way of beating it. Someone told me on Twitch. It's really funny. Then the final Weavile, you could just destroy it with Feraligatr like always. It's very simple. And with that, Team Galactic is finally dealt with. The fight really wasn't that hard. If you have the optimal strategies, you shouldn't have too much issue. Like, you might have to dodge 1 or 2 crits, but really you should be fine. Now after that, we just skip straight to the final gym leader, Volkner, and I know DRXX had a lot of issues with this gym leader. He spent 2 hours planning. Guess how long I spent? 2 fucking minutes, that's right. That's how big my ding dong is. They don't call me the Nuzlocke Enjoyer for nothing. We use stall strats, baby, because you love to see it. People are always they're always talking about hyper offense, and they're always talking about how you have to play offensively, but they just don't understand how broken stall strategies actually are. In this battle, Jolteon is really easy to take advantage of. I lead off with Torterra, but here is how I trivialize this battle. So, the lead Jolteon is really easy to take advantage of. It doesn't do that much to Torterra, it can only really use Grass Knot. So what I do is I can Leech Seed it, then I could just basically pivot around. You could even PP stall it if you want, but I can go to Snorlax, then Yawn it. And I'm basically just like sitting around, letting Leech Seed recover me, kind of like scouting her out. But when Jolteon's asleep, I take this opportunity to switch in my bulky Nidoking and have it Toxic Spike on Jolteon. Once you set up 2 Toxic Spikes, you're probably going to win the rest of the battle really easily. The Jolteon just won't do anything really. You could pivot between Venusaur and Torterra, so Venusaur will take like no damage from Grass Knot, and the Jolteon will just die from Leech Seed, and you also bait out his healing item, which is really nice. So now Jolteon is down and 2 Toxic Spikes are on the field. I could have brought Stealth Fox as well, but I actually forgot to put that on Torterra, so that would have been even funnier. The next up is Rotom Heat, and that gets absolutely destroyed by Snorlax, really. Like, mine's got Thick Fat, and it actually has really bad IVs with Naughty Nature, but with Thick Fat you still destroy Rotom regardless. Make sure you have Rest, so if Rotom tries to use Will-O-Wisp, it won't even matter on you. Yawn and Slack Off are also really good. What I actually do is, once my Snorlax is burnt, I know that Rotom will always go for Thunderbolt because it's not going to use Overheat against a Thick Fat Snorlax, so I switch in Steelix or Nidoking, then it will go for Overheat on it because that's the only attacking move it can use, so I then just go back into Snorlax, and I basically do this to make it so the Rotom Heat's special attack is really low from Overheat because it does have White Herb. Once its special attack is down by like 4 stages, Snorlax with Rest can literally just sit there and just do whatever the hell it wants in the Rotom. It's pretty funny. So that's pretty trivial. Next up is Electivire, and this thing is very strong. You can play very defensively with the Toxic Spikes and just let the spikes take care of it. Now, I did do some pivoting with, like, for example, predicting Ice Punch, so I go into Steelix, then I predict like Close Combat, then go into something else. That worked, but I made a humongous misplay. I made a very, very big misplay, and I almost literally wiped here because of it. I was so stupid, but thank God I did not get punished, because I'm never punished, baby. Well, actually, you'll see soon that I get punished. But so I have Steelix, and I predict that Electivire will go for Close Combat, right? That makes sense. It's a fighting type, super effective, why not? So I go into Golem, and I thought Golem is Focus Sash, so I could always just switch it in, it will always take a hit, then Electivire will just die from toxic damage, right? Until I realised that Electivire, it went for Earthquake for some reason. It went for Earthquake instead of Close Combat. Because it went for Earthquake, my Golem was just able to hang on and dodge a crit. I was like, that's kind of strange, but I mean, if it went for Close Combat, I had Focus Sash anyways, right? Until I realised that this Golem actually has leftovers because I forgot to put Focus Sash on this. which was very stupid. I think when I was going through my mons, I just habitually put leftovers on everything, so I accidentally took the focus sash off this, which was really, really stupid. Had that Electivire gotten the crit or went for close combat, this run would have ended because of a really stupid misplay. But thank God that did not happen. Never punished, am I right? But with that stupid blunder done, the rest of the battle is no issue. Snorlax can just completely wall the Rotom, along with Torterra. And the only mon that's left in his team is Raichu, and that does absolutely nothing. Oh yeah, there is Luxray, but that thing is choice banded, so you could just bait in like Ice Fang, for example. And you could just play around it really well. Or even better, you could bait out an electric type move and just go into ground type and it's locked into it and you just basically default dance on it and win. It's really funny. So, here we are, chat. 8 gym badges. I have beaten the first 8 gyms of this game with Hardcore Plus rules without a single death. So this is just showing that this is definitely doable. I did have to dodge a few crits in this run. I did make a few misplays, so that my strategies could have been a bit better. But hopefully now, you should have a good idea of how to do this yourself should you want to try this. Because in this next battle, my flawless streak finally came to an end. Oh god. You know, like how in Renegade Platinum you could fight Arcade Star Dahlia? She's an optional boss battle, might I say. An optional boss battle. Well, because I'm the Nuzlocke enjoyer, right? I thought, you know, let me truly flex in this game. Let me beat her. I could beat her easily, right? Wrong. I had a strategy for her, and it sounded like a good strategy. However, things did not go to plan. I'm going to show you. This is how the One Death Eagles reset run finally ended. Well, that was something. Honestly, I was real tilted and real salty after this battle. 50% of it was me getting pretty bad RNG, I will say. But the other 50% of it was just me underestimating the AI in this battle. And I overestimated Snorlax and Chansey. I guess that just goes to show how strong Modest Nature Wise Glass Togekiss is, especially if it doesn't miss Hurricane. I guess what really sealed this battle for me was how Zapdos got critical hit Thunderbolt with Paralyze on Snorlax, and how the Togekiss got a critical hit on Chansey, and how the Zapdos was able to get the burn. Those things just made me lose a battle. If it wasn't for those things, I would have been able to stall it and win, but unfortunately, in a game with this many boss battles, this game has so many boss battles, bad RNG will happen eventually, so I feel like I could have prepared better for this. I guess it's just ironic how I failed this run after 8 gyms to an optional boss battle, but you know, I had to prove the point, and it backfired, so it is what it is. However, despite this, I'm still very happy with where I got to in this run. I feel like I did really well, and I'm still very satisfied with having beat all 8 gyms, and they were all pretty much flexed on, apart from like Candice. I do feel like I've improved this challenge a lot, and it's still quite an accomplishment, and I recommend a lot of you viewers to try this out yourself. I think it's a very fun challenge. There's a lot of strategy to be found in this, and a lot of fun to be had in it. But this pretty much concludes the video. So yes, it is possible to beat Renegade Platinum without losing any Pokemon at all, with Hardcore plus rule set. However, I was not able to do this time, though it has been done by other people. That's pretty much the video over, so I'll be moving on to new challenges. You can let me know what you want to see. I could always do the Blaze Black 1 Death equals reset, that's quite a popular challenge, or I could try it in other games as well. But yeah, let me know what videos you want to see. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you've learned something also. Nuzlocke Enjoyer, I'm all about teaching people about Nuzlocking, am I right? So, this is a video over. This is Nuzlocke Enjoyer, signing out.